Welcome to Frost Sessions, the Frost School of Music's official podcast. In this episode, our music industry program director, Professor Serona Elton, talks with Joel Andrew, president of CD Baby, one of the world's largest distributors of music from independent recording artists. Together, they explore the way the access to the marketplace has changed for artists over the past 20 years, what the key turning points have been along the way, and what the options are today. Thank you so much for joining us, and remember to stay tuned to Frost Sessions.
Hello, my name is Serona Elton. I'm a professor of music industry at the University of Miami Frost School of Music. Welcome to this episode of Frost Sessions. When you enjoy listening to a recording by your favorite artist, it may never occur to you to think about what it took for that recording to be available to you. You could sum up the activities into 4 categories. The recording had to be produced, the recording had to be turned into a digital or physical product, the recording had to be distributed, and the recording had to be promoted so that you knew of its existence. Once upon a time, these things could not be done without the help of a record label, which provided funding, relationships, and expertise. But as each of these activities has changed over time, opportunities have grown significantly for independent artists, that's those not signed to a record label, to take charge of their recording career. As I considered how to take you through an exploration of this topic, something rather obvious jumped out at me. CD Baby is a company that was started in 1998, and its corporate history, especially the services it has made available to artists, provides the perfect lens through which to learn about these changes. So I have invited Joel Andrew, the president of CD Baby, to join me for a discussion of this recording artist access evolution. Starting in the mailroom and bouncing to every department along the way, Joel has worked at CD Baby for 18 years. His background as a touring, in other words, starving musician, gave him great insight to enhance and add to the fantastic services and support that CD Baby is known for. Completing his undergrad and law degree while working full-time at CD Baby, Joel was the general counsel and SVP of Business and Legal Affairs prior to stepping in as the president in 2020. His focus is to make the business everything an independent artist needs to be successful on their own terms. Welcome, Joel.
Thanks, Serona. Nice intro and good background on, the landscape of the industry and where we're at today.
Thank you so much for joining me. I was hoping that we could take our listeners, our watchers through a tour of the history of the distribution of recordings and the sort of access and control that was available to artists at different points in history. So I'll tackle what comes before CD Baby. So if we look at the time period before 1998, right, looking backwards then, generally artists needed a record label to fund those activities that I mentioned at the beginning of the show. Especially with respect to music production before the 1980s, it really was the case that you needed a professional recording studio in order to make a record. In the 1980s, the tech became cheaper, but the quality still was not great. By the early 1990s, the first digital audio workstations, as we call them, using this cool new software called Pro Tools, started becoming popular, but they were still really expensive and needed professional expertise to operate. But towards the end of the 90s, that had changed, and access to music production tools became more affordable and more widespread, and that started opening up opportunities for independent artists. So now if we kind of, and we let's be clear, we fast forward through almost 100 years of history to get to 1998, but that's only because we have a finite amount of time. So I am skipping over, 100 years or so of technology, but let's fast forward our audience to 1998, the launch of CD Baby. So what led to the launch of CD Baby? What can you tell us about what was happening at that time?
Yeah, sure thing. So the founder of CD Baby is a man named Derek Sivers. He was an independent musician. What I mean by an independent musician really quickly is there's kind of the major label artist who they own your sound recordings and they own your publishing, the 2 separate rights to each song. Independent musicians In 1998, basically anybody who wasn't signed to a major label, you were an independent musician. Some of those made a lot of money. Some of those were like my bands and made very little. So Derek Sivers, he was a decently selling artist. He was playing the college circuit, getting out there, selling his CDs, doing very well. And there was a local music store that he wanted to get his CD to be sold through. And they said, hey, we love your music. You're a great guy, but we need to hear from your distributor. And he said, what is a distributor? How do I get a distributor? Asked all the right questions. And ultimately, what it came down to was there was something in between a major label artist. And if you had kind of a minor label or an indie label, you would sign with them, and then they would have some sort of structural arrangement with the distributor. Those distributors were largely owned by the major labels, so it was really inaccessible. So for Derek, who was successful as an independent musician, to have a distributor, it's actually kind of hard for him to do. So 1998, he thought, why don't I create my own distribution company? This was during the, I guess, first phase of the .com craze. So why not create a website music distribution company? So he figured out all the boxes he had to check in order to just get his CD into this local CD store. And they said, we need you to have a merchant account. We need you to have so many CDs available, all these different things. He just created his own distribution company. And it was the first independent music distribution company that was available on the website. He was actually selling a CD there, as well as he finally got a CD into the local store. As he was doing that, he heard from countless other artists that were going, you can just create your own distribution company. Can you work with my CD? I would love that as well. So he just kind of started opening it up to all of his colleagues. If you're a touring musician, probably a lot of musicians that are looking for the same things that you are. So yeah, started off with something like him and a few others, and then eventually 35 artists, and kept growing and growing. Started getting interviewed. Again, .com era, it was kind of funny. If you were the first person to sell something on the internet before anybody, the first person to sell umbrellas before anybody else, that was really revolutionary. So Derek basically, he revolutionized the entire music distribution industry by making cdbaby.com. So started off with just an immediate need that he had, but it grew into what it is now today. We work with 1 million artists who are getting the same types of services that Derek created over 20 years ago. So that's how it started.
It's really is. It's an amazing story. And in fact, he also, by the way, put out a book, an audio book, an ebook, a little bit diving into the history of that. So once he got it up and running, can you help everybody understand how exactly did it work at the time? Like what exactly, what did an artist have to do? Then what did CD Baby do? How were the mechanics worked out?
Yeah, so Derek was really smart, is really smart, and knew that the people he was going to work with were independent musicians. They weren't sophisticated business technocrats. They were guitar players who were trying to figure out how to sell their CD better. So he made it really, really simple. All you did was you paid an upfront submission fee, or you would go to the website, create an account, send in 5 CDs with a $35 check. And side note, our price isn't much different today, 20 years later. But yeah, so you would send in $35 check, 5 CDs, and then ship them to our warehouse in Portland, Oregon, which is where I was working at the time. And then we would give you at that time, it was before this distribution to iTunes and Spotify and all those sorts of things. And we'll get to that later, I'm sure. But at this time, it was just, we created websites, individual websites for artists. So that way they didn't have to create their own website. We gave them a page, send all their fans to that page, very easy URL. They could also call us and we'd sell the CDs for them or whatever. So yeah, you would just sign up, send us some money, send us your CDs. We'd put them in the warehouse. We'd make a website for you. And then some artists started selling millions of CDs to us. Some, like my bands, sold far less.
So I have a slight story as well that I can just say, harping on how amazingly easy it was to use CD Baby. It still is, but at those days, we have a student organization called Kane Records. It's like our own little independent record label in the Frost School of Music. And back in the day when we put a CD album together, we would make it available through CD Baby. And I don't want to like gloss over some of these really critical points that made all the difference. The fact that you only had to send in five, only had to send in 5 CDs, or a very low number. I think you said 5.
Yep.
That is huge, because there was a point in time not terribly long before then, where to even get in to play in this market, you were manufacturing some minimum number of units that, what I explain to my students is, before I could sell 10,000 CDs, what did I have to do? And they always think, is that a trick question? I'm like, I had to pay to manufacture 10,000
Right.
CDs. And so, the barriers to entry, the costs involved in CD manufacturing, if you'd have, let's say, required that somebody had to send you 1,000 CDs, that would have eliminated a certain group of independent artists who said, I can't afford necessarily to manufacture larger quantities. So the fact that you only had to send in a really small number of units, and that it was, $35, it really, that was accessible to everybody. I mean, that really made it so easy, I think, at the time.
Yeah, that really speaks to me as well. Yeah, $10,000 or a 10,000 unit initial pressing, versus this was also when CDRs were starting to be a thing. They were cost prohibitive to buy a drive like that in the early 2000s, but your studio probably, they were making you a little master. They could probably make you 5 masters. You'd sketch out your own little artwork, put it into a jewel case, and send those in. And then what was really nice was, instead of $10,000, $15,000 to make a CD pressing, you did something out of the studio, which shifted more with Pro Tools and being more accessible eventually down the road. But yeah, you had 5 CDs, and then you could learn, like, do you have an audience? Can you sell CDs, or is it just your aunts and uncles buying it? Because they would send in 5. And then if they were out of it within a week, we just knew that, oh yeah, we're just going to order more. We'd send them a bunch of money. They would go press their CDs. So yeah, really user friendly. And that was the goal from the beginning, was let's not try to find really successful artists and distribute their music. It was, let's make sure that these artists are heard. And if they need to do more, we'll help them do that.
Yeah. And I think another thing that happened at that time period that was so significant as well, nowadays we talk a lot about data, right? Like I can't get through a music industry conference or meeting or anything without talking about data. And today more than ever, it's true that artists have access to data about their fans in ways they never did before. However, as early as, the earliest days of CD Baby, when you would sell those 5 CDs, CD Baby shared information with the artist about who those people were, so you could know if most of these CDs sold in the New York City area, maybe you should go play a concert there, or, just the access to information was also really unprecedented. And I have to say, through all of the physical sales, a lot of years of physical sales activity, having access to information about where those CDs sold within the United States, the city, the state, that's not information that just every artist has. You have to pay for special software to get that information, like SoundScan. But these are little things that are just kind of get buried in the history, but they are monumental in terms of changing the ability to start really understanding where your fans are and how to make that work in your favor.
Right. And I think that both it was revolutionary to parallel when the band the label that my band was on, they just had units pressed, and then they sold, and then they cut us a check. And we didn't know, should we be touring Austin really hard, New York really hard? Where, to your point, where are these coming from? But what was even cooler at CD Baby was we had the actual email address, and we would, unless the customer wanted us to do otherwise, we would forward the email address to the artist. And then something really cool happened. We started giving advice to the artists on when to properly reach out to their fan and how to build that fan base, how to build a relationship and rapport with that fan. Because really, they're buying your music, but really they want a piece of you. They want to connect with you and be part of your narrative. So we started writing educational pieces for artists about, give it a week, give it 2 weeks, let them love it, let them fall in love with the CD, reach out to them and say, hey, I just a quick note to say, thanks so much for buying my CD. It means the world to me. Click here to sign up for my, follow me on, this was MySpace days or even pre that, follow me here, all those sorts of things. And it wasn't just like that's when it really shifted from not just a tool that artists love, that they would tell us that they loved it so much, but was really like, we can engage with artists and empower them to do even more. To your point, yeah, all this stuff seems to be coming from Austin. Have you thought about maybe you need to spend some more time there? Yeah, that data was really, I kind of forgot about that. Thanks for bringing that up.
Artists signed to Sony at the same time did not have the email addresses of everybody who bought all their CDs and Tower Records and Virgin Records. So that level of data was really mind blowing when you put it in the context of what's been available to who and when. I couldn't let that fly by us. I'm a data nerd, so I'm like, it's amazing.
A little note in there was this, I was on the phones then a lot too. And so we would be open until like 11 o'clock or midnight sometimes. I don't know why, but there was just some guy who called in who said, hey, I don't know if your company's a scam. I've sold 200 CDs through you. You're paying me, so that's great. But I've sold 200 CDs through you to Japan. And it was this rapper from like the 90s who had already retired. Was like, I'm out of Oakland, and was like, I this isn't working out for me, but I have all these CDs, so sure, I'll just sell them through CD Baby. Kept getting picked up in Japan, and he was like, is this real? Is this legit? And we stayed in touch, and eventually he reached out to a venue in Japan that was like, we've totally heard of you. We know who you are. We would love to pay for you to fly out to Japan and tour. This guy was like done with music, thought that he was over. Was kind of like focusing on this next phase in his career or whatever. And then he was like, this is crazy. Through this data, I'm able to follow up with Japan, had a lucrative career out there, just to be able to find new markets like that. And it was really globalization kicking in, which was pretty big, which was pretty new, especially for avant-garde artists or artists that were kind of like, a label would never pick them up and really give them the appreciation that they need, or they would play a town that just kind of doesn't have a whole lot of fans for Django pop country or something like that. You can get that out to the right communities, and then you can see, oh, they love me in Japan, or oh, they love me in Lincoln, Nebraska, or whatever that is. And your fans are out there. And we were just starting to learn that then, that there's a market for anything. You just got to figure out what they are.
Exactly. So, all right. So I'm going to stop my little data, trip down memory lane for a second, and I'm going to keep us moving on the timeline. So CD Baby created in 1998. Only 2 years later, the year 2000 was a very, very significant year for the recorded music industry. By March of 2000, Napster, at the time an illegal file sharing service, had more than 20 million recordings available. That's just mind blowing. And I remember exactly those days. And the impact was devastating. There's no question about that. From that point forward, revenue from physical music products steadily declined. And after the launch of iTunes in 2003, digital revenue started to increase. But it would not be until about 2015 that overall revenue from the recorded music side of things in the industry started to increase again. It had to kind of hit bottom in 2015. So I want to bring another party into the mix here, right? Another thing that happens in the evolution of in the evolution of CD Baby. So Disc Makers. Disc Makers was a company started in 1946 by Ivan Balin, and you'll correct me if I say that wrong.
That's correct.
And the Balin Record Company. So he created the Balin Record Company, and there was not any shellac manufacturers in Philly. There were no 78s, what they called them, on shellac. There were no manufacturers in Philly, so he decided to start his own manufacturing plant. And so 10 years later, he renamed that company Disc Makers. In 1959, it began manufacturing other formats like vinyl, 8-tracks. Remember those 8-tracks? Cassettes, which I hear are making a comeback, which is very strange. CDs, DVDs, Blu-rays, they've expanded over the years to manufacture sort of every kind of physical product out there. And it was interesting at the time that they started connecting with CD Baby, despite this sort of digital distribution revolution that's really took off with iTunes. disc makers was still successfully filling that physical product manufacturing need of artists right throughout the 2000s. And then 2008, disc makers bought CD Baby. And I will also give a little props. Disc Makers was one of the very first sponsors of Arcane Records label. They actually donated our manufacturing circa 1995. But so 2008, they bought CD Baby. And so why do you think the sale of CD Baby to disc makers made sense at that time? What was happening in the music industry and with physical music distribution that made sense for that kind of a partnering to happen?
Yeah, so this is around when I started stepping in, about 2003, starting to hear more about disc makers. So CD Baby, again, you would send us 5 CDs. We were cdbaby.com. We sold largely CDs. Stepping into music or digital distribution, maybe we'll talk about that. But on the physical side, we were a huge retailer of physical CDs, as well as we were a huge, we were working with so many artists at the time, 30-something thousand artists or something, and growing consistently every year. And so Derek was really smart and was Derek Sivers was figuring out what independent musicians need. Then the person who was running disc makers, his name is Tony Van Veen. He was a punk rock drummer that converted into a music executive professional. He was selling CDs and doing really well at that. And then realized, 2008, digital distribution was starting to encroach on the sales that CDs had. So I think he was reading the writing on the wall, but also he suddenly had access to tens of thousands of artists, hundreds of thousands of artists eventually, that wanted to buy those CDs from him. So he ultimately wanted the data of the artists and to be able to say, you need 5 CDs, we can get that for you. And it was also shifting around that time from, you used to only be able to put in an order for 1,000 CDs. They started doing short orders, really high-end CDRs or other kind of pressings that they were doing. So that was the strategy, was writing on the wall, let's get into this digital game. CD Baby's doing it right. Oh, another thing that I would say is that disc makers was very focused on independent artists. They did some work for big stuff and all that sort of great stuff, but they were really championing the independent musician cause. So there was a lot of alignment. We were already partnered up with disc makers that if you signed up with CD Baby, we'd send them information to disc maker, or we'd send the artists information about disc makers and how to order. So there was just a lot of writing on the wall, good strategy of being able to have access directly to those artists. And it just made sense. And they were the East Coast office and we were the Portland office. And it was a good little matchup.
It makes so much sense. And, I remember from my own experience in sending off artwork and masters to have manufacturing done with them. They made it so easy for you to do it that, they knew they were not talking to somebody who worked in, production and release planning at a record company and was doing this, for the last decade. They very much were, just as CD Baby was right there in that pocket for independent artists, making it easy for them to navigate something that had been, rather mysterious and just the realm of the industry professionals before then. So it makes so much sense. So then we move into digital distribution, right? So as I mentioned, iTunes launched in 2003. And CD Baby was invited, one of those first batch sort of suppliers if you will, invited to be a supplier of recordings to iTunes in 2003. And, in other words, right, at that point in time, CD Baby became a digital distributor, distributing recordings of their artists to iTunes. What was the significance of that? And that sounds like such a little press. Oh yeah, 2003, CD Baby started sending to iTunes. And then, 2004, we painted the office blue. I can't even find the right words to describe the importance. You want to attempt to tell people how important it was this happened? Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I would just say that, so all the reports of 2020 suggest that independent content. So again, you have the major label stuff, you have some stuff kind of in between that's maybe major label, maybe independent, but it's probably major label. That's what I would consider it. And then you have independent musicians. It was the fastest growing sector of music in the industry. So independent musicians are actually taking market share from the majors at an alarming rate. And so now you have CD Baby, you have DistroKid, you have TuneCore, let alone these independent publishers like Songtrust. That entire ecosystem of being an independent, successful musician, ToneDen, Feature FM, Foundy.com, Show.co, that entire world wouldn't exist if it wasn't for CD Baby getting in at iTunes in 2003. So what happened was everybody was, all the majors were really freaked out about Napster and its impacts to the industry. Napster was destroying the market share for major labels. iTunes says, well, we'll do what Napster does, but we'll monetize it. And we'll give some sort of informal share, or maybe even formal share of our revenues or our stock or whatever it was to incentivize these majors. And so you had the 5 majors at the time, now you have 3, but then you had the 5 majors, and they were the only people who negotiated a license with iTunes because they were getting this mutual exchange. And somehow you got Derek Sivers and CD Baby in there to be the 6th one. And if the way that I think about it is, it was a choke point for the major labels to get rid of all this independent stuff for once and for all. They don't want us to encroach on their market share. As a struggle theorist, that's the way they look at it. The 5 majors were there. If iTunes had moved forward only with majors, and why I say we wouldn't have the entire ecosystem that we have if it wasn't for this move. We had these 5 majors. If there was nobody else there, and you had, let's say you had a, .com was kind of starting to come back. You'd say you had $1 million. Why would you invest it in a website that would distribute content that will never be at the sole place where music is consumed? So I would never invest in that. And then artists wouldn't receive the services that they have. And CD Baby sure would be selling CDs, but we were already seeing that artists are slowing on that. They want digital distribution. They're going to want to be at iTunes, but they can't. And it would be like what it was in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. Unless you are a major that had international distribution of content, you're nobody. You're just a local bar band that's never really going to get out there. So that's why I full-heartedly believe that it was a choke point. And if Derek didn't get CD Baby's catalog into there, none of this would happen. What was really cool was CD Baby made a lot of money for independent musicians that year and continued to increase. And so, of course, if you were an investor and you had $1 million, or you were a technical visionary about how to develop something new, you could go, I would do what CD Baby did. So we were successful. There was suddenly a boom of competition for independent sector, which is great. I don't, as a president of CD Baby, I want things to be easy and light and all that sort of stuff, but I'm an independent musician and I want good competition to be there to create the best products for independent musicians. But just to take it back one step, how CD Baby got in there. Not only that Derek was a really good negotiator and he had a bit of a team that was helping him out with this, some great people. So in 1998, when he started, when you would mail in your CD, we would scan the cover artwork and we would only rip or download or offload the audio content from the CD for 4 or 5 songs for 30-second clips, just so that way when we created your website, you can see what you were buying. You could listen to a couple of clips of like, yeah, I kind of want to buy this. Nobody else who was really doing websites was scanning and ripping content at that level. So I came in 2003, we had 35,000 titles. Derek had just closed this deal because iTunes said, hey, you actually have a facility, the know-how and the ability to actually provide us digital files of all that content. This was new. People were scanning and ripping at home, but they weren't doing it at scale. CD Baby knew how to do this. You didn't need all that for a website. This was before anybody really knew that you should. Now you send music anywhere. You get the full album, full catalog, all those sorts of things. But that was before anybody really knew how to do that. So ultimately, Derek was very sophisticated, knew how to make a very passionate pitch to Steve Jobs. But if it wasn't for that infrastructure that we had of being able to work with 35,000 titles and be able to handle the next 35,000 titles, we never would have got in there. And just a side note, that's when I came in. So my first job at CD Baby was to work through the night and scan and rip CDs all day and or all night, I guess. And yeah, me and maybe 4 or 5 other people, we would just work all day, all night, and we would just scan and rip because we had no clue what we were stepping into. We didn't know that this was going to be this big future-proofing thing. But yeah, that's ultimately how we got into digital distribution to iTunes, and how we wouldn't have this independent music sector if it be what it is, where you're eating market share of majors if you didn't have access to that then.
Yeah, it's such an amazing story, because to me, from the point of view to an independent artist, the fundamental problem that CD Baby was created to solve was the fact that, he could not get his CDs into the shelves in Tower Records, right? Like, there was a barrier to entry. You could not get in the store. You couldn't get in the store without a distribution deal. And the fact that this deal, CD Baby and iTunes, meant for all the independent artists going through CD Baby, your recording can be right there on iTunes, right next to, Bruce Springsteen, right next to Madonna, like, you name your Uber star, and people, right there on the same iTunes screen, there you were. That whole barrier to entry just got obliterated by CD Baby doing this. And to me, I think so many independent artists, and I hope they listen to this session, because every time you log into whoever your digital distributor is, and I know you said there's competition,
yeah,
but that's what opened the door, right? It started there, because if it hadn't have gone that way, independent artists having access to the digital stores, who knows when, if at all, that kind of, that choke point, like you said, would have ever started to come apart. You can't overstate how important that development was to independent artists getting their music out to their fans everywhere.
Yeah, and now you have, in contrast, you have Spotify saying, we need that catalog. You have the next, that Boom Play out of Africa going, we need that catalog. It's the complete opposite of what it was those first few years. When I first started being the head of licensing, or the SVP of business and legal affairs, was like, I was doing everything I could to get DSPs to start talking to us. But now that it makes so much money, and so many every fan has probably some band that they know that they think nobody else knows about. Like that sort of culture and the impact to our society, all this stuff happened because of that moment, largely. Yeah, it's just bonkers. It's unfathomable to me sometimes, but I got to be there, so I know it actually happened. It's very real. I don't have to pinch myself.
You were there. So things have obviously evolved in the digital marketplace since then, and as we mentioned, physical sales declined, downloads started increasing at the same time. It took until 2015 for things overall to stop the downward tilt and start turning around and starting to rise again. And people who are consumers of music, who are listening to this, know, they've probably switched from downloading to streaming. So that's been a major evolution over the last number of years. And it is a different world today in terms of how CD Baby works in this digital distribution space. It's not just iTunes, and it's not just Spotify, right? So today, can you tell people a little bit on the digital distribution front? What is digital distribution like today for an independent artist through CD Baby, as opposed to, there was one place, iTunes, really, in 2003?
Yeah, now there's places everywhere, and we all know the big ones like Spotify, YouTube Music, Apple, Pandora. All those, we know the big ones. There's these new ones coming out of as we recognize that there's an independent sector globally everywhere. We're just learning more and more about all these places. So what's funny to me is, like, Deezer is it's not a new platform for me, but it's a new platform for me to have access to. But it's huge in Europe, especially France. It's huge in Brazil. That's where everybody wants to be right now, at least what I hear from our reps down there. Let's see here. Boomplay out of Africa has maybe more subscribers than some of the huge platforms out of the US. Jukes all these different places are, what's really cool about it though, is in order for them to compete, they have to present a different offering than just what Amazon Music provides. So Amazon Music is really cool, and how it is competing is that they also let you sell physical off of their platform, and they connect with a little bit in a different way than what Spotify does. Spotify is the biggest, but it's also the only platform out there that only focuses on music. Apple's huge too, of course, iTunes, but it is Apple. It's selling these other products. So everybody's kind of coming in with a different angle and different offering of what the kind of environment or the experience that the fan really wants to have. One of my favorites that I'm glad to see more fans and listeners hear about is a website, or is a service called Qobuz, Qobuz, that's out of France. What's really cool there is everybody has all the catalog. Everybody basically has the same thing. There was this thing called windowing, where you would only have like a Beyonce track or a Kanye track for like a couple of months or something like that. But now basically, essentially, everything I want is everywhere. But Qobuz, what they do is there's editorial content in there. So if you're an audiophile and you want to listen to HD audio, a lot of places have HD now, you can read all about trip hop of the 90s while you're actually listening to their curated playlist of trip hop. It's like that's my style of engaging with fans in a genre. And so everybody's able to do something a little bit different. What's happening now with Facebook and TikTok and even Twitch, you're just getting further interactions with sometimes the artists themselves. It's all over the place. And what I really like about the industry right now is everybody is trying to figure out, how can I make fans just have a fantastic experience, just the best experience ever? Which is nice, because though I'm an independent musician, I'm also a fan. And I know that the way I want to interact with my artists are the same way that my fans want to interact with me. So yeah, it's just kind of happiness left and right. But there's I don't know, maybe certain sectors and ages I recognize that I'm not always the most advanced when it comes to certain apps sometimes. I'm really glad to work in a community that knows, like everybody at CD Baby knows a bunch of stuff. Everybody's kind of aware of something different that's going on. But what I really like is, everybody's trying something different out. And so we released a pie chart of the total royalties paid out to artists depending on DSP. And the big ones are on there: Amazon, Spotify, YouTube. But these newer ones like Facebook, again, Deezer is in there. It's sometimes I can be a little too US centric to recognize that there's a lot of. So what I really like about the pie chart is most artists go, that's where my revenue comes from, but I can see that revenues could come from everywhere else. I need to figure out a strategy about how to go after those. It reminds me of when I was in green rooms as a touring musician and get to talk to one of the headliners and ask them, where are you making your money these days? Now you can see, I don't have a YouTube music strategy. I don't have a YouTube shorts strategy. I need to figure that out. And then, because there's clear revenues and royalties available for artists if I figure out how to do it right.
Well, you bring up two really critical points there. You guys distribute content to over 150 outlets. That is, again, iTunes to 1 to 150. And the fact that there's so many international outlets, again, like the contrast is just amazing. Like if you imagine that you were an artist, a successful artist on a record company in the 70s, and you've been asleep for a while, and I said to you, you could get your music in all these countries. Like you can, and physical product distribution, very few had real access to global distribution. And generally speaking, even if you were able to get your CD in some shop in France, if you didn't have money to market in France, no one was going to buy it. So the access to not only all of these, really sort of niche services that are bringing something special to the table, but the fact that you can get your music in front of people all over the globe is also pretty mind-blowing and quite a journey from where it was. And the fact that you're, go ahead, please.
Oh, I was just going to jump in that what I like about it is, I don't know, 5 years ago, I was listening to a head of one of the majors speak about what's the value add that majors provide when you're looking at, competition from these independent distributors, labels, services, that they said, well, one of the biggest things that we can provide is the logistics of global release with it, perfectly timed global release. When Beyonce releases an album or a track, it is coordinated globally in this way that was just Herculean 5 years ago. And now it's like, I can do that for every track that comes through our door. So just the things that you used to have some massive infrastructure for. A CD Baby has that infrastructure, but it's just digitized and available to independent musicians who maybe you'll make $100 a year off of their music. They can still get their track into every place in the entire world like that. And it's just going to continue to make it easier and more sophisticated. And back to your original point, or not your original point, but a point a while ago, the data that you have access to, all of it, you can go into Spotify for artists, Amazon for artists. You can look and see, this is a playlist that they're listening to me on. This is a territory, the city that they're picking me up on. All that stuff is super powerful for the independent musician right now to be able to use to kind of guide and direct their next efforts.
Yeah, I think that's exactly where I was going to go next, was the data. And you look backwards and you think, wow, everybody was flying so blind, and you couldn't really strategize because you had no idea what to do, where to do it, if it was working. It's just a different world. So let's build on this, because I think the fact that it is a different world speaks to these evolving needs of an independent artist. So in 2003, you also launched something called Host Baby, which basically was website hosting for independent musicians. I know nowadays we all think, get a Wix or a Squarespace, but you have to understand what website hosting was like back in 2003. That wasn't for the faint of heart. And since then, you've expanded this approach of continuing to offer services beyond distribution services to independent artists, and to kind of meet them where they are, what they need at that time in the industry. So, over the years, what are some of those additional services that CD Baby has offered, and why did those get added to the mix of offerings?
Yeah, so let's see here. We talked about it a little bit earlier about how we were just selling CDs, but then we found out, well, if we provide this data, independent music, we have a huge value add if we just give them some direction or some education on that data. We were sending them their emails. Here's when to reach out. Here's what to say. And through that deeper relationship and rapport that we were building with the artists, we were all artists and we knew what the pain points were of being a starving musician and trying to do our best. But we also realized that we had a voice that we could really, in a position of, power, to really do something about services for these artists. What's really hard, and I guess scale is key. So what's really hard to do is when you have 10 artists and you build some sort of artist services thing. But when you have 30,000 artists, 100,000 artists, now CD Baby works with about 1 million, you can do things at scale that really helps a bunch of people at once. So that's ultimately what Host Baby was all about, was artists need something different than kind of the current things that are out there. Will we make money off of it? I don't know, but let's at least put in some efforts to try to help our artists, because anytime we help out an artist, the more that our artists succeed, the better it is for everybody. So we really started engaging in, well, we're not just a CD distributor. We don't just sell CDs on a website. We're kind of champions and advocates for independent musicians about what else they need. And so it's in our DNA to consistently question, what else do artists need? And is it something that the reason that they can't access it is because of elitism? Can we fix that because of scale? And so we're a tech company, artist-centric. Many of us are independent musicians ourselves. So yeah, let's just put our efforts towards the things that we care the most about and we know will make the most impact. So yeah, Host Baby was an easy win. We did some other things where we focused on books, we focused on films, and it just didn't take off in the same way that really for us to go, we're a music company. Let's just keep focusing on the music. Derek wanting to get up at iTunes was based off of that same ethos of like, well, that would help artists and we could do that because we're at scale. And then eventually, well, why would we deliver them to streaming sites? Everybody hated streaming sites for a little while because of the royalties that they were paying out. We're like, if artists want it, let's get them there. Let's try to help them get there if that's what their options are. So yeah, we were just always felt like advocates and champions that run a music tech company. So let's just put our efforts into where they should be.
So what are some of the different services you offer now? Because, you know, and I suspect that if you ran down the list, one of the last ones, the more recent ones, you know, you've started even branching into providing some help on the song publishing side of the industry, which has been touching my life in some of my other life work, in addition to what I do at the university. So, you know, just to help our listeners understand the kinds of services that independent artists really need these days to navigate the industry and cut through the clutter to get their music heard. What are some of those services you have now?
Yeah, so let's see here. As you said, publishing is a big one for us. So this is always a tricky world. So I always want to make sure everybody understands what we're talking about. But you have the sound recording, which is basically like what's on the album that I'm listening to. But then you have the underlying work or the composition, basically what you write out before the band plays it and records it. Recording, sound, and the composition. The composition world for publishing, these DSPs and radio and places like that, they have to pay out a royalty for the publishing as well. And so that's a really complicated environment. CD Baby can help with scale, or help because we have scale and we're a music technology company. So we said, let's go figure out publishing. What was really cool about the publishing and quick side was as we were starting to build out CD Baby's publishing services, that's when we first heard about a company called Songtrust. There's like a big long story about our integration with Songtrust and ultimately how it introduced us to Downtown Music Holdings, which is our current holding company. But yeah, we found Songtrust, who basically had the same mission that we did. We wanted to do sound recordings for independent musicians. It wanted to do publishing for independent musicians. So we just kind of matched up. And if you sign up at CD Baby and you want publishing services, it's actually powered by Songtrust. What was some other really big ones? So let's see here.
YouTube. I mean, so those two things alone, like, you know, it's amazing to me how what seems like you guys have spotted places where independent artists are leaving money on the table. Like there's money there and they're just not able to get in and grab what's theirs. And that Songtrust relationship there, so many independent artists write their own songs and they're not getting, you know, some of that money due to them because publishing on some levels even more complicated than the recording side of the world. So, you know, you stepped in and you're like, these artists now they're entitled to these other revenue streams and they don't have necessarily the ability to collect that money. So YouTube is another great example of that. Maybe you can speak to that one for a minute.
Yeah, for sure. So YouTube's one of the largest, payout for royalties for our artists is YouTube Music. And that was a ever evolving relationship where, YouTube at one point had a bit of the pariah vibe that Napster had for a moment. And then YouTube said, we want to pay royalties. Help us do this. CD Baby, you're able to clear a whole bunch of licenses. Why don't you do that for us? And so, you can go and sign up directly with YouTube and you can upload your content. But if you've ever had that thing where if you upload a video and then you wake up the next morning and it's down because there's some sort of rights thing, there's this thing called Content ID or the CID system where it actually has audio fingerprints. It's able to recognize, I just uploaded a video, but in the background is a Lady Gaga track. It's able to identify that and say, hey, if you want to upload this, we're going to put a commercial in it. And all that commercial money is going to go to Lady Gaga. We can do that though. And so they don't even have to clear it they already pre-cleared it by Lady Gaga. So ultimately CD Baby does the same thing. So you can go up there and upload those things same things yourself. But instead of needing a major distributor to be able to collect those royalties, CD Baby does that for you as well. So you sign up with us, we have your catalog, we will go and collect the royalties, whether it's your own music video or it was a fan who uploaded. What I really like about YouTube these days is when an artist releases an album and then reaches out to all their fans and says, hey, we want you to do a cover song of our track. and perform it, or not a cover song, but we want you to dance to it or make your own music video or whatever those sorts of things are. And those will actually send royalties back to the artist. You don't have to get them pre-cleared. It's all through YouTube. So yeah, you can upload directly and kind of take care of some of that yourself, but the value add for CD Baby is we take care of it all of it for you. You don't have to navigate it, as well as we actually pay out. We have a better commercial rate than what you're able to get directly from YouTube. And also we collaborate really well, this YouTube Shorts, and they're opening up internationally for some of these other tools and features. CD Baby is making sure that, and our competitors do similar things, don't get me wrong, but we just make sure that we're keeping your content at the forefront of those additional services. But what's a good example? Spotify has something like 60,000 new tracks a day. And so
a day, yeah. 60,000 new tracks a day are uploaded to Spotify, right? So that's the competition. That's what you have to somehow or another have people find your music. That's mind blowing.
Yeah. So how do you cut through that noise? So CD Baby, again, music tech company that works at scale, that's very focused on championing and advocating for independent musicians. What's the next problem they're having is they're going, hey, Joel, I signed up my album. It's at Spotify. Now what do I do? Or it's at Spotify. How do I cut through the noise? And so we've been really focusing on what we call the artist promotional tools. We have one of them that's called Here Now, which is basically like a smart links generator that also does a bunch of other things that other smart links pages don't do. But what is it? When I was a touring musician, I would yell from the stage, hey, we're selling CDs in the back, go buy our CD. Now, when I still perform, it's kind of like you can find our content at this place and 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 all these different places. Now the solution there is to kind of go, because you lose fans, they want to listen to you right there instead of try to figure out how to find your content. So we have this smart links page that basically you land on that page and you click which platform you like to listen to through, and then it sends you immediately to that website. What's also really nice is it's collecting user data so you can follow up with them later and you know where it's coming from and all those sorts of things. So those are called smart links. It's not uniquely at CD Baby, but our Here Now smart links do a lot more than our competitors do. It's helping you cut through the noise because your fans are going directly to listen to you. Another one is show.co, and that so it does pre-saves and pre-ads. So if my track I know my single is going to drop in about a month, I can basically get a little sign-up list for all my fans to make sure that the day that it launches, they get an email or a message to go, hey, Joel's track was just released at Apple. Click here and it'll take you right there. So you're basically just signing up for these lists for pre-saves and pre-ads. Show.co does that for free. There's some kind of paid upgrades. And then we also do digital ads. So we have what we call the ad builder. You can go to Facebook, you can go to Google Ads, and you can spend a lot of money really quickly and not really get the results that you want. But yeah, like you're on Amazon and then you see you're searching for shoes on Amazon, and then you're on Facebook and you see those same shoes. That sort of targeted digital ads is the space that we're stepping into for our ad builder product. And similar with Songtrust, we started building out publishing, found Songtrust. We partnered up and they were able to empower it. All of our digital ads are actually powered by our sister company, Foundy. So though show.co is very much focused on independent musicians because it's complicated, Foundy is powerful stuff that you kind of need to be a little more sophisticated around. But if you just have $200 and you want your album's going to get released, or you want to go on tour and focus ads on a specific area, we'll make sure that your ads are played on Spotify or Facebook or whatever is important to you. So just always, what's fun about my job is we just get to think about what other problems are independent musicians having.
That's exactly it. Because let me tell you, as a professor of music industry, and I speak on a lot of panels, and let's say there's a new thing, right? Oh, Facebook's going to have music, and okay. So the question I always get is, so how do I get paid? Like, how am I going to get paid? And normally my first answer, because, Bruno Mars is not usually in the audience at these conferences, right? He's not asking me. It's independent artists asking me, okay, that cool new thing, that's awesome. How do I get paid? And my answer almost always has to be, there is no way for you to tap into that at this stage, right? In the early days of almost everything out there, like when Facebook's like, oh, we're going to lean into music, and you're reading articles that they've signed a contract with Sony and they've signed a contract with Universal. At that stage, at the very beginning, when some of these new things come into existence, there isn't a way for independent artists to get in on that. They can get their content there, but they can't get paid usually, because most of these opportunities are not the kind of thing where they can just sign up directly and, you know, the money just transfers into their PayPal account. That's not the way most of these platforms work. They only work with sort of corporate suppliers of information. And so I can't even count the number of times where there's been some new thing and everyone's like, this is so awesome. How do I get that money? And I'm like, you can't right now. You can't. Yeah. And then about 2 months later, or, you know, something, I'll be an artist. Oh, no, you can go through CD Baby or your competitors at times. But the point is that, you know, companies like CD Baby have this seat at the table with these other, you know, massive content companies. And so these doors to tap into these revenue sources are open for independent artists. And without companies like CD Baby, they would be shut out of it all. You know, it really is amazing.
Yeah, I see the JD in your title. I'm an attorney. Yeah. So the way that we have CD Baby is an industry solution, not just to independent musicians, but to those platforms as well. So those platforms are a digital visionary who's like, I'm going to create something that nobody's thought of before. And they get out there and they start doing it and they get a bunch of traction, and TikTok's blown up and its competitors are blowing up. And then eventually they get big enough that they're like, we should probably hire some in-house counsel. And they hire some in-house counsel, and the counsel goes, so how are we clearing these licenses?
Exactly.
How are we doing that? And so that's what CD Baby's job is. We represent about 10 million tracks. Our strategy is to go to these platforms and say, hey, we can go dark and dirty road if that's what you want to do. But otherwise, we're just trying to get independent musicians paid, and we'll clear 10 million tracks for you. And you'll actually get pre-cleared 10 million tracks. That's like a hockey stick moment where they are going from consistent growth and then suddenly 10 million more tracks. Yeah, we're an industry solution to these places. And I hope that I hope that artists understand that whether they're at CD Baby or one of our competitors, that really that's the value add that we're supposed to bring. And that's what I think CD Baby is bringing, is we're figuring out. So what's a good example is like NFTs. I get questions all the time, like, how do I make money off of NFTs? And it's like, well, we explain it. We do a lot of education around, well, there's like a $400 investment in order to be able to connect your digital content to a blockchain transaction.
Mint an NFT, exactly.
Yeah, all this stuff is like pretty complicated. So maybe the answer isn't always, here's how to make money from it. Sometimes it's just, we want you to understand what to look for. But then in other places where it's like Twitch is paying out massive money to to a lot of creators. They're doing great, but they also kind of have a different model for how they clear music in the background. Some places like Amazon and Spotify, they go pre-clear. Peloton pre-clears. That was a big one recently where they kind of got in some hot water.
Yes,
Twitch does this kind of notice and takedown process. And so they have a different strategy. We're continually advocating for them to have a different approach to kind of how they clear those licenses. But ultimately, we are able to go here. Yeah, if an artist wants their content to be pre-cleared on Twitch, there's no money yet, but that's what we're consistently advocating for. And that's our value add. That's what we used to do, was just kind of go, hey, this could be terrible or super easy. Let's just do the easy route and just pay a bunch of independent musicians a bunch of money and let's call it a day and start working on it.
It's so great that you use the word easy. I mean, I think the fact is the music business is more complicated than ever, actually. Okay. It has not gotten simpler. It is 10 times more complicated. Like every year it gets exponentially more complicated. So what exactly is independent artists to do? They are not going to become an expert in every single aspect of the industry that continues to get more and more complicated. Like they would never have a single waking moment, to make music if that was their entire mission. So that's the kind of thing that CD Baby does, in that it's access, but it's so much more than that, because it is advocacy, right? This kind of an organization like CD Baby that's there for independent artists makes it easy for them, because you do the hard stuff. You figure it out, you create content, educational content for artists, which I want to talk about next. You go to the negotiating table with the big companies that would never, ever talk to an independent artist directly. They just wouldn't, and that doesn't scale. So a really, really complicated industry that, when artists say to me, like, could you explain all this to me? I'm like, I can, but a lot of it is not going to stick. What you're better off spending the time on is trying to figure out what company you want to associate with, partner with, engage with, that is going to do right by you, as opposed to you trying to navigate these waters yourself. And you're going to run into so many closed doors anyway if you were trying to actually do it on your own. It's not even possible.
Yeah, and my parallel is that I'm the bass player. And so that means that I'm probably doing a lot of the business side of the deals. I wasn't out in front. I wasn't writing the songs. So my role was frequently working from my cell phone in the back of the van when we were touring, trying to book the next gig, trying to make sure that our label is happy, all those sorts of things. So yeah, every band or artist is a micro business, and they have to think of themselves as needing a team, because all these responsibilities have to happen. Some artists love doing the business side. I was one of those. That's really fun for me, but you still need somebody to do that biz. And that's ultimately what the goal of CD Baby is to be everything that an independent artist needs to be successful on their own terms. Is let us take care of the biz side. We really want you to just go make more music and be heard. Let us help you with digital ads. Make sure you do it right. Make sure that once your content goes up at Spotify, it stays up at Spotify, because we pre-cleared everything to make sure that there's no issues. So yeah, let us figure out the nuts and bolts. And we know we need it because the rest of my bands needed it. And so, yeah, we just get to focus on this side of it. So again, artists can just go be heard, go make more music, not worry about it. And we send them checks.
Exactly.
Also, I tried to be I was very interested in becoming a tax attorney at one point.
Really?
I find that stuff really fascinating. I still do. Or I still find that stuff very fascinating, and went to a couple of kind of speaker panels. And I talked to a couple of attorneys at lunches, and they were just like, man, what you do in the music industry is crazy.
Oh, it's crazy.
To what we do in tax. It's like, yep.
It makes tax look easy. Yeah, it really makes tax look easy. And it doesn't get simpler. It just doesn't get simpler. But
let us focus on that. That's what we want to focus on, and we're really good at it. So,
absolutely.
And that's the value add that our competitor, the really good competitors, the ones that keep me up, they're doing the same thing. They're approaching it is like, let us fix this stuff. You just make music. Don't worry. It's like signing to the perfect label. We'll take care of everything for you. You just go make money and have fun and go play some more shows.
Yeah, it takes so much more than just getting your music on the digital shelves these days. Right. That's barely moves the needle. Well, let's talk for a few more minutes before we kind of start to wrap it up a bit about that educational side of things. I will say, again, as a professor, I use the content that you guys put out there for independent musicians all the time in my classes. It is fantastic, and it's free, and it's out there on your website. But in addition to all that kind of educational content on the website, you guys have been hosting a conference since 2015, DIY. In the music business, when we say DIY, it does mean kind of like home improvement, right? Do it yourself. That's what we mean by DIY, do it yourself. And your conference is called DIY Musician Conference, or at least at 2015 when you launched it. So what made you want to do this conference? And there's a lot of music industry conferences out there, I know, but this one seems a bit different. What makes it different? How does it meet this need? What is the need?
Yeah, so it's DIY Musician Conference because it's a conference for DIY musicians. We go to your point, we go to countless music industry conferences, and no critique of South by, But what South by is trying to do is to pull together the entire music industry for a celebratory event. It's kind of hard sometimes as an independent musician to find really valuable content there. It's just not the priority of the event. It's trying to do something much bigger. DIY Musician Con is just information that you want to know about kind of upping and leveling up your career. So we bring out artists who have and interview them who have really fascinating trajectories or objectives, or they had like mission-based art or something like that we really want these musicians to learn a lot about. We bring out the DSP partners, Spotify and YouTube. They come out and speak specifically about, well, this isn't for the Beyoncés, this is for the independent musicians. Here's what you really need to know about our platform. And it's that for 3 days, basically from 9 o'clock until 5 o'clock every day, just pure information. How we got there, other than just recognizing a need, was we started back to us educating artists about when to reach out to their fans. We just realized we know this stuff, we're really good at it, and maybe some things that are extra complicated that we don't know yet, we have the resources and access to certain people who do. So information about the MLC or Sound Exchange when it was new, all those sorts of things are pretty big. So we had a blog, and then we started a podcast, and it was the #1 music podcast on Apple for I don't know how long, but it's a couple people from marketing, a bunch of different guests who come in and just talk about, here's what's going on with the music industry. We hear some other music podcasts and they're just kind of general ads and how-tos on their products. These are real things we take questions from users or from artists. We answer those questions. We talk about our own experiences because of people who are speaking on them, or touring, performing, recording musicians. And so through that podcast we started doing these little breakout meetups for each town. Essentially, artists just kept asking for more. You can go to DIYmusician.com and read our blog. So we started publishing a bunch of stuff there. We still have our DIY Musician podcast. And that's why in 2015, we were like, artists are demanding this. A little secret is we lose money off of that conference every year, but it's so important. It's just part of our mission. Artist education and empowerment, champion and advocacy for independent musicians. It's part of our mission. Again, when our artists do better, everybody does better. So we really put a lot of effort in there. Quick plug, I don't know if I'm allowed to. We're having a virtual conference August 26th through 28th. It's free. You just go to DIYmusician.com and we'll have some information for you. It's free. We're going to bring out a bunch of speakers from DSPs, all the stuff that we would do normally in person, and we'll get there next year. It's in Austin, but this year it's virtual. Come join us. I get to interview some cool artists, all that kind of fun stuff. But yeah, that's a big one for us. 1,500 people each year come out and just get taught on how to be an independent musician. It's cool stuff.
Wow. So I've 2 questions left for you. So, okay. So here's my scenario, right? And I kind of hinted at this a little bit before. Let's pretend that you had there's a successful artist in the 70s and we kind of put them in like cryo freeze, right? They've been like on ice, on ice since the 70s. And now they've thawed out and we're trying to explain to them, what is it like today? How would you describe to them who the last thing they knew was, if you didn't have a record label, forget about it, right? How would you describe to them what the marketplace is like now in terms of the kind of access and the tools that independent artists have? How would you describe today's world?
Yeah, the contrast. It's faster than it ever was before. I think that would be the #1 thing that would blow my mind, is what used to be maybe a year-long progress. You would write some songs, you'd go tour them for a little while, see what stuck. Eventually you'd get back to the studio, you'd probably work through the studio for a while, it would get released or get mastered, all these different kind of steps along the way until it finally got to the pressing plant. And then that could take for who knows how long. Then it comes back to a release strategy that has to get coordinated globally. You're talking maybe a year to be fast for a release. Now, if you have a fantastic idea for a song, it's on every platform tomorrow. and it's recorded in your basement, it's recorded on your phone, it's recorded straight out of whatever MIDI interface or computer you got. It's uploaded to our website immediately. We've distributed it out to all of our partners. You've emailed every fan that you've ever had before about how it's dropping tomorrow. They're going to get a reminder in the morning. It's going to pop up, and here's what I need to go listen to on Spotify. That's sort of like, that's just bonkers to me that you can do that at that speed. And then that speed allows for mass volume in a different way than, I think that would be the next thing that would blow my mind, is 60,000 tracks per day at Spotify. But what would be, I think where a cryo-freezed musician would start gaming the system, and this is what's happening now at least, is, well, if I can release a content or a track globally, and it's that fast, why aren't I releasing something every day, every week, maybe every month, and just kind of hash it out and just be like, what used to be I remember when I recorded my first album, our engineer was like, you have to pay $10,000 per recording. This was like Nashville rules. You had to pay minimum $10,000, otherwise you couldn't guarantee its success. Now it's like, well, I already have the app on my phone. Why not just plug everything in and just kind of do it? And there's already a drummer that kind of like AI and all these different pieces and get it up, and just do 1 million of those and see what hits, instead of being like, well, these songs have to be perfect if we're going to put $100,000 into the recording, because we have to recoup $100,000 before we make any profit. Now it's just chug, 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 chug. And so that would be shifting as well. They would have critiques of like, well, it's not high quality and all that sort of stuff, but it is. The caliber of what's coming out of somebody's phone right now is leaps and bounds of independent studios, let alone some A-class studios from the 70s, 80s, and even 90s. So yeah, speed and just volume would just be, it's radically different. And I don't think that's going anywhere anytime soon. And almost to the immediacy of like what Twitch is doing right now, is it's not even into distribution, it's into immediate consumption, because you're going to watch my channel. And it's just like, things are, I don't know how you get faster than that, but somebody's going to figure it out.
Someone will figure it out. Exactly. Yeah. That evolution of, access to be able to make lower cost recordings, access to the store, access to information about what was happening, and education about what to do with all this access and information. It's just been this amazing evolution. So now I'm going to ask you to look in your crystal ball for a minute. Last question. So that same question I just asked you, how would you describe what's happening today, right? What does the landscape look like for an artist today? 5 years from now, if I said to you, hey, Joel, so tell me about what's exciting you right now about what independent artists are able to do or have access to. What do you think you might be answering that question within 5 years from now?
5 years from now is, I think it's going to be what is a musician and what is not a musician, let alone what is a professional musician or a paid musician, or does anybody even care anymore? I think that's where 5 years from now, I think my generation was very much about, you were either a musician or you were not. And I think the next generations are starting to question that considerably. And now Irving Azoff had a quote that he was like, what he really wants from YouTube is for there to be, to make sure that the next Kurt Cobain doesn't become a dentist instead. And I think that's back to my generational concept of either you are a dentist or you are a musician. I think the future state is going to be, are you Kurt Cobain and a dentist? And I think it's going to, the overlapping of what it means to be a professional musician is ultimately where I think we're going. And I really love it, because I think that humans are musical. I think it's necessary. And I think it's quite problematic that elitism says that you're not a musician. I have a lot of friends from my 20s that were better musicians than I ever was that don't play music anymore because life got serious. And they said, I'm not a professional musician. I'm going to stop. And now all their gear is dusty. And they're probably paying for therapy because they are a musician and they need to play music. And I think that that's some of the big systemic social problems that I get to help. I don't have to come up with the solutions. I just get to help implement them. Some really smart people are coming up with new ideas of how, like, So why aren't you just constantly like recording an album? Or why can't I just constantly listen to kind of like the music that Serona's like humming, or some other engagement than purely, I am a world-class musician, and so I validated my position as a musician, or not, versus maybe it's a mix, and maybe I get to have you perform at my dinner table from the VR and all these different things. And yeah, engagement and what is a musician, and these platforms like Twitch and TikTok really challenging, because at least today, you can be living in your parents' basement recording platinum level tracks and never leave your parent. I've heard these stories that their parents don't even know that they have 1 million subscribers on YouTube, that sort of stuff. And I think that is just going to continue to compound and go kind of like, well, why aren't I a dentist and a musician? Or why can't I do both? And those are good things to me. It's going to totally mess up the music industry, which is what's great. It needs to get continually checked.
I think you love that. I was like, I think you definitely enjoy messing up the music industry for the better.
Well, that's what we did. So why not keep going? We only started. Yeah. I'm excited for who gets to talk back about the decisions that CD Baby made 10 years ago, which will be my regime. I really like this question to think about, like, yeah, what are they going to say about, like, yeah, Joel had it together, but he really missed how great it could be. And yeah, that's good future thinking. I like it.
Excellent. Well, Joel, this has been so much fun. Thank you so much for joining me. I learned a ton. I hope that those who've been listening or watching us have learned a ton as well. So thank you very, very much for joining me. And thank you to our audience. Thank you very much. Thanks for tuning into Frost Sounds, and we'll see you on the next episode. Thanks. Bye,
Thanks so
Joel.
much for having me, Serona. Good to see everybody.
All right. Thanks. Bye-bye.